Hello, friends. Welcome back to Trending. Today is Thursday, February 22nd. It's 9:22. Good morning, Joe.
How's it going?
Good. How are you today?
I'm all right, man. It's already Thursday.
Yeah.
I was gone Monday, so I feel like everything's pressed.
Yes. You had a big hockey weekend, and you had a sick kiddo. We had to miss last week because you had going to some doctor's appointments, so we're back. You want to share your hockey news before we get too far?
I mean, as this team went down to Dallas and won, man, it was fun. We made good memories, and so, yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
This is fun to play. When you win every now and again, it's good, too.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Exciting.
Very cool. Well, congrats to Ezra and his teammates.
That's right.
It's very cool.
Anytime hockey comes up, you have a Mighty Ducks reference.
Yes. I'm just glad it wasn't Team Iceland. Gunnar Stahl. You got to beat that guy every time. Nice. All right, man. Well, so today I woke up. I was kind of going through my normal stuff, checking out all the, Twitter and Google, all the things to see what we can talk about. And the biggest thing on most of those sites right now is this cell phone outage. So last time I checked, I think it was 47,000, 48,000 people. No, sorry, 74,000 people have not been able to have any cell coverage this morning. So no texts, no calls, no internet service from cellular devices. It's mostly AT&T, I guess, but there's been reports that Verizon, T-Mobile, and I think U.S. Cellular. Someone even said Cricket, which I forgot that Cricket was still even around. So,
all right, way to go, Cricket.
Way to go, hanging in there with their green couch. But so far we don't know what's causing it. Okay. There's of course some people who are jumping to some crazy things about Russia or some kind of crazy conspiracies.
As we do, yes.
There's going to be all kinds of things like that leaking out over the rest of this day, however long it takes for it to get back up. Hopefully it's up by the time we're done recording here. But I saw a funny tweet from a friend of the show, John Acuff.
Oh, man.
He said something like, wouldn't it be funny if we just found out this was some guy named Gary in Ohio just tripped over the wrong wire? Like, what if Gary in Ohio brought the whole world down with cell service? It could be something like that. Who knows?
Come on, Gary.
We'll see.
Get it together,
Gary, watch where you're walking. So we can go a lot of different. Here's what I'm thinking with this, Joe.
Okay, all right.
So a lot of people on the articles and the tweets and stuff I saw, people were just outraged, right? Like they can't live without their cell service, right? People are, that's understandable. We're so used to it. If something like that goes down, we rely on it to live our lives, right? So it is frustrating, it's inconvenience, but people just lost their minds.
Right.
That's what people do, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And similarly this week, you and I both have Wise cameras in our homes. Wise had an outage this week for a little while, and I'm on a Facebook group where people were just going berserk about not being able to check their cameras on their phones for like an hour or whatever it was. So we're just so used to this technology when it's not available. We just don't know how to live anymore, and we're upset about it. We get angry. We let things fly. Here's the next thing that I thought after that.
Okay.
So very short story. A while ago, I had a conversation with someone who is quite a bit older than me, and I was kind of talking about how busy our family's life is. We just have a lot going on and trying to keep up with stuff here, just kind of a hectic season. And they said something like, oh yeah, I remember what it was like when I was your age. And maybe this is my youth and naivete and whatever, but there's part of me that's like, you don't get how complicated modern life is. Like, there are things that my family is dealing with that weren't around 50, 60, 70 years ago. Like the world it's just different now than it was a few generations ago. So all of that preamble, the cell phones go down for a couple hours and people are just losing their minds.
Right.
Culture's crazy and we're busy and we're not. It's a hard time to be alive, I think. Right. So one of my next thoughts is what's it gonna be like for my kids 20, 30 years from now, if there's cell phone outages or whatever, like. What's culture going to be like down the road? Are we on this kind of irreversible trend of we're only going to get more and more reliant on technology? If things do go down, is there any way that we can kind of back up and kind of calm down and maybe have a simpler life? As always, I'm throwing a lot at you. There's a lot of things we could talk about, but cell phones are out. The world seems to be getting crazier and crazier. Technology is advancing faster and faster.
Right.
Is there any hope of slowing down? What do you think?
Oh my gosh. All right, so much here. So I guess I would just say this, like, I don't want to dunk on anybody who was freaking out.
Yes.
Because if everything truly is wired into your phone access, and it goes down, like, why shouldn't you panic?
Sure.
Like, if you can't contact anybody, I think you mentioned that people couldn't even call 911.
Right.
So they can't even, like.
They couldn't do anything on, so including 911.
That's right. So by no means do I want to dunk on people and say that we are less we're weaker today than they were a generation ago.
Yeah.
I think those conversations are kind of boring to me because people say, well, people need to get more grit.
Yeah.
And like everyone does.
Right.
I mean, I think people think they're strong until they're not, right? Mm-hmm. And then, they point the finger at somebody complaining about something they find trivial, but then they'll complain about something that's equally trivial, objectively, 5 minutes later. So right. I think we just have to say, like, all of human life, from primitive days to developed days, mm-hmm. there's a certain fragility about our life that can change in a moment.
Right.
The thing that's tough is that we just don't quite know when that moment might be. We can anticipate it. Mm-hmm. I think that's what makes it worse at times. Yeah. And we're not being Chicken Little, saying, "Oh, the sky's going to fall someday." Like, no. Like, what happens if some sort of cyber attack does wipe out the grid, mm-hmm. Cell grid, Wi-Fi grids? Like, I think we're kind of in some bad shape.
Yeah.
I haven't taken a survival class ever.
Yeah.
And so what happens if all of a sudden the Skillins need to figure out how to live without all the modern niceties that we have?
Yeah, right.
And so I think we shouldn't dunk on one another. Mm-hmm. This is a brush with, yes, even though life is developed, more advanced, more connected, it's still fragile. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so I think that we need to be prepared internally at some point, saying, what happens if a few things do get unplugged? Yeah. What if, Larry in Ohio, whatever, Gary in Ohio, really does do something bad and like we're out of it for a while? Mm-hmm. Can we bond together and figure it out together?
Right.
I think this is just it'll be a case study in humanity. Mm-hmm. Like, will we learn how to help one another out, or are we going to fend for ourselves? Which philosophical story that people have been presupposing is going to be true when those days of calamity come? I'm glad it's not today.
Yes.
I'm glad it's 75,000 people and not, millions of people.
Right.
Because I think it's a different moment.
Right.
If more than, 75,000 people are without their cell coverage.
Do you think it's possible for us to, should we be really intentional about trying to become less dependent on our devices? Yeah. Is that a good goal for us to consider? Or do you think that's just how it is and we have to roll when things like this happen? Or
I think that we could certainly try. But I think that there's so much at stake. I think the powers that be, the ineffable powers that be,
yes,
I think they're going to work pretty hard on bringing us back online because they're just as dependent as we are. I remember we pastored a church in Memphis a few years ago, and we were on the same power grid of a bigger and more influential church in the city. Mm-hmm. And I just remember one of our elders saying he was so thankful that we were on that same power grid, because if the power goes down, we'll probably get up quicker because we're on that grid than others. And so I just think, yes, should we become less reliant on cell phones and maybe the connectivity? Sure, but has that ship already sailed?
Right.
Has the world always just assumed that this is how it's going to be now? So we could try to be Luddites that become less and less technologically driven. Mm-hmm. But maybe we'll be left out in the everyday goings of things too. So I think it comes with one comes with the other. I think there was a great book by a guy who used to be the editor of Wired magazine. Okay. Uh-huh. And he telegraphed something. He said, we are entering into an era of when things can be super personalized for you and me. Our search engines can be optimized. Algorithms are going to be, geared towards us so that we can get things a whole lot quicker. But with that privilege comes kind of a letting go of our privacy. We reveal who we are, right? So if you want more specialized, you're going to lose privacy. If you want to keep your privacy, you're going to get more of a general treatment, or maybe even a less than specialized treatment from the world around you. So I think that we're just kind of in that era where we can't have it all. So I think this is the wisdom point of it all is. Wisdom tradition point is we cannot have it all. We cannot be very connected with cell coverage and Wi-Fi internet and have no threat of that going away in a moment if there's an outage of some sort. So I think we have to just live with the fact that, once again, we can't have it all, no matter how advanced we get down the road in progress.
I think so. Just this week, I was at our 2030 ministry has this Tuesdays at the Table thing for our 2030, and I was there. We were talking about AI stuff, and just I kind of went over an overview of where things are at, some things that I'm using, just kind of a fun thing to talk about. I think that's kind of a similar conversation to this, and that for me in general, I think with technology, I understand anytime people are concerned or they're kind of scared about anything new, I understand because it's an understandable position to take. But I think whether it's, cell phone dependence or AI or whatever, any kind of new breakthrough, I kind of always come back to it is just a tool. And I think you can use any tool for good or for bad, right? And I think our tools get more and more complex and more advanced. But at the end of the day, it's a tool. You can use AI for good or bad. You can use cell phones for good or bad. So I think, again, it's kind of this recency bias thing. If it all feels new, it all feels like this is the first time we're having to have these conversations. But really, I think it's just another tool, just like our great ancestors have had throughout time. Whenever there's anything new, we have to learn how to use it responsibly, how to monitor ourselves, monitor others around us. So I guess if we're kind of taking that approach, if it's AI or cell phones, it's a kind of neutral tool.
Right.
I think it just comes back to just being good people, good, healthy followers of Jesus, right? Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah.
And how can we continue to develop ourselves and guard ourselves regardless of what the tools around us are?
I do think that we need to admit that, yes, we make tools, but I think tools make us too. This is one of the philosophical underpinnings of Black Mirror, that show on Netflix, but that's something that's been talked about for quite a long time. Like tools draw stuff out of us from our subconscious probably, and they do reshape us. And what has all of our connectivity done is I think it's made us more of a communal people. I think our species has always been communal. Yeah, I do think that there's a sense that we may be more connected, or more that there's like a hunger for connection more than ever. And I think that that our tools have made us into that way. And so I think that has to go into the equation as well. Now, how can I use this tool to deepen my faith or be historically Christian in my witness? But then ask the question, like, how is this shaping me? And is this going to... And I think the most basic evaluation would be, will this increase the fruit of the Spirit in my life? Yes or no? Or totally or not totally? And I think that should be some of the discernment process. And I just think that at times these things are too easily decided and determined. I think there's just a move always in the church to be leery of technology and progress, and that's fine, because there's been some cautionary tales out there. But what happens when it's a foregone conclusion that these things are going to be lying around, that these things are going to be removed or disposed of, quickly? What are we going to do? We see this even in like the Old Testament and even in the Gospels. Even Jesus had this leeriness of cities. I think he was content staying in the country of Galilee and maybe even like Samaria and those places where he went. For whatever reason, he chose not to go into the city very often. There's maybe a couple trips there. And but the Romulus and Remus tale from Greco-Roman culture, there was a leeriness of cities. Deep in the book of Genesis, what did Cain do shortly after God banished him from the territory? He went and built a city. What happened in that city, though? Like there's an escalation of violence. So there is this critique of cities in the early biblical text. But what did the Apostle Paul do? He's a cosmopolitan guy. He went from city to city because there was more people there. He planted churches in trade centers so that the gospel could then be like a network that goes to the remote areas. And then what is the vision in Revelation? We're not going back to a garden. We're going to a city. So I think even over the panorama of Scripture, like some of these like early positions that the faithful had, which were probably true, they were able to be renegotiated as our imaginations were soaked in Scripture and soaked in Christian practice. So I think it's not so easy to say, avoid these things because they're always bad all the time. No, I think the discerning Christian says, how can these things help create the people of God, help increase the fruit of the Spirit, because God will bless those things with those tools in mind. And so I just think that we have to be a little more discerning and not so carte blanche, like the blunt forced trauma discernment. But no, keep our brains on and like discuss it in community and say, how can we actually leverage this for the sake of the gospel? And we might come to some really interesting conclusions.
Yeah, that's good. One last question, we'll start to wrap up here.
Right.
So we started this by saying some people are like understandably very upset by this. They feel like it's, how dare they not give me access to my phone. I need this, or so there's that reaction, right?
Yeah.
I think you and I are kind of similarly wired, but I think I try to be a pretty chill, calm presence most of the time. I think you're pretty similar. How do you, Joe Skillen, how do you decide what things are worth you getting riled up about and what things aren't? So, for example, like you mentioned, it's understandable that people are upset because in our world today, they need these devices.
Yeah.
And you're also a very calm person. I don't see you calling up AT&T and chewing them out. But some things are worth getting upset about. Other things aren't. So how do you decide which Joe Skillen wins out when things like this happen? And what advice do you have for people watching, listening?
Yeah, I think we probably all have a different hierarchy. I mean, you bring a great question. And this is where going back to the idea of discernment is an insightful thing. So I think it was John Cassian, a church father, an ancient contemplative of our faith. He called discernment like being able to, by feel, determine whether a dollar or like a coin was fake or not.
Okay.
And so like people, they were actually money changers in that world, but they really had to, by feel and by weight, kind of discern. They didn't have like the magic pen. Like, you remember the cash days?
Yes.
And we did like the pen thing and like the light.
Yes.
No, but like by feel, they could tell if something was counterfeit or was genuine, right? And so I just think that you and I have to decide, like, in our hierarchy of values, can we very quickly, from the best of our ability, determine if this is worth getting animated over or not worth. Yeah. And I think the older I get, I think this is probably with when like Ginger and the kids around, I just think, well, this immediately impacts our family dynamic.
Yeah.
Then I think that's something worth probably getting riled up about. I'm not so worried about the faith. You know, some people want to like draw battle lines for our faith all the time. I don't think the Christian faith is going anywhere. I don't think it's under threat or under attack. Not only because I just don't see that practically. I don't see that theologically. If God's in charge, then let's just keep on believing. And don't stop believing.
There you go.
Right? And so I think if there's like a legit legislation out there, I haven't seen one yet, that prevents us from being historically Christian, not just my unique sliver of Christianity, but historically Christian, then I think we can say, okay, like we need to bear witness to this.
Yeah.
But as Peter says, to do so in Christ's way, with gentleness and respect. And, you know, I don't know, people have differing opinions of whether, you know, non-Christian philosophers are helpful, but I'm doing this philosophy class.
Okay.
And Friedrich Nietzsche, he came up with this thing for discernment. He did not believe in religion, but he still wanted to develop his moral life.
Okay.
And so he's got this principle called the eternal return. Okay. Which was like, if you had to live this moment 100 times, would you do the same thing every time like you did just now? Yeah. Yeah. Like, would you really like? And he's like, be a person of integrity. And so I think I would say, like, if we had Groundhog Day, like if this happened again, like the AT&T outage happened 100 straight days. Yeah. How would I act today? Yeah. And would I get to the end of this day and say, I didn't do that right. I need another chance at that. Yeah. Or would I say, no, if I had to do that 100 times, I would do it exactly like that. Yeah. I think that's the way to try to treat some of these things.
That's a good exercise. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. All right. Well, should we wrap it up there?
Yeah.
With all of our friends watching on a device, probably. Hopefully has internet connection.
Yeah, let's hope they're back up by the time this thing comes live. And they can go on about their day. But can you imagine, like, you can't, like, turn off your... Like, I just remember, like, when the Wise thing went out. Yeah. Like, how am I going to, like, unarm my house security system so I can let my dogs out? Right. Like, how am I going to do that? This is weird.
GPS... Like all that, if that all gets shut down, it's very ingrained in our lives for sure. Yeah, so, okay, well, may all the technology be in your favor today. Thanks for watching, listening. Hope to see you Sunday next week.
All right, sounds good. See you next time.
See ya.